My name is Awstin Gregg. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, licensed chemical dependency counselor, and I'm the CEO of Connections Wellness Group. Today's mental health moment, I want to talk about the role of defense mechanisms. Everyone, in my opinion, on this planet, to some degree, has defense mechanisms. Some are helpful, they're adaptive, others maladaptive. And when we think about defense mechanisms, what we're really trying to do is avoid something that is uncomfortable to us. And the tricky thing about defense mechanisms is far too often it causes attention to our symptoms, but not the core root of what's actually going on. One of the most popular counterintuitive phrases we use in therapy is the problem isn't really the problem. Now, sure, we want the symptoms to start and we want to help an individual, but if we spend our time treating the symptoms but never the core root, we might find ourselves spinning our wheels. I'm going to remark on a common defense mechanisms that we see in teenagers, and this is introjection. This is the phenomenon in which we change our beliefs, our ideals, our morals, everything centric to us to gain a stimuli, to gain far too often the approval of someone else. So here's an example for you. I worked with parents who moved from New Mexico to Texas. And they had an 8th grader, and he was a star athlete at the 8th grade level. Straight A's, never cussed, never did crimes, never in trouble. Now what ended up happening is he moved to DFW, and next thing we know, this same individual is struggling, no longer interested in athletics, failing school, committing crimes, and from time to time even doing drug use. And we heard that feared statement from the families that far too often accompany behavior like this is when we look at someone you care about and you say you no longer recognize them. Harsh reality to be in. But far too often, this is where introjection comes in. And see, we could spend our time worrying about prevention for drugs and relapse plans, and we could worry about maybe even scared straight programs. We could get creative treating the symptoms, but what was happening is the core root never went addressed, and the symptoms, they just kept returning. When we understand defense mechanisms, we can see the influence there, because what really was going on? Well, we had a strong support system in New Mexico, and we moved to DFW, and we had nobody. And he described eating alone in the cafeteria. He described scenarios that were uncomfortable. But the peer group that did give him attention, well, it might have been described as the rougher crowd, but it was better than sitting alone, being lonely, and having sadness. And this is the role of introjection. Introjection rationalizes our ability to change our values so that we can receive the stimuli of the things that we care about the most, or far too often to avoid the things that we don't want to feel anymore. So when we think about this mental health moment, I think we should pause, because sometimes the problem isn't the problem. And it's an encouragement to see the true understanding, to understand the role of defense mechanisms. And so we can sift through our treatment plans, we can sift through our attention, our focus, and we can see that person and what's really going on. So in this mental health moment, I want to encourage all of the listeners that for those dynamics at play, for the people we have, the people we care for, the ones that we come into contact with, that sometimes their behavior just doesn't make sense. Let's see if we can find the true cause of that. Because when we treat the cause and not the symptoms, our overall person is healed. Thank you for coming to today's mental health moment.